Hi friends, in the last lecture we have customized the exception handling and we are throwing these attributes in case of exception. These attributes are coming from Spring Boot. Automatically Spring Boot, whenever exception comes, Spring Boot returns this message. Under status code we have configured at the class level. As the response we have given the notation user not found exception. Here we have annotated with the response status, and whenever exception comes in the controller we are written user not found exception. Same is being written here, and error status timestamp path is coming from the Spring Boot. Status code is coming from our, we have sent the response status to customize it, right, using the application at the rate response status. Now we wanted to centralize it. We don't wanted to return all these default parameters. We want to, as per our project need, as per our organization need, or as per your team needs, they are going to return the few parameters, few attributes consistently across all the services. So I'm going to create one class exception response or exception response model. I'm going to this return the exception response. I'm going to implement create some parameters private date of till timestamp private string message private string status code. Just code is enough, status is enough. Let me make it as code so we'll not get any confusion. Make a getters and setters method. Implement the parameter constructor. Wanted a parameter constructor. Don't have to set one by one. Set all at once. Source. Go to the source. Click on constructor using fields. Generate parameter constructor is generated. We are going to customize. We are going to centralize the exception handling in Spring Boot. Custom exception controller. We are going to control exceptions using Spring Boot. Okay, to make it, what we have to do, you have to use REST controller device. When you annotate at the rate REST controller device, all the controllers from this package, right? All the controllers, whenever exception comes, it comes to here, and here we are going to implement few methods. First, I am going to implement public. We are going to return response entity. We are going to return response entity and going to return what? Exception response model. Any exception we get, we are going to return consistently this response. Exception response model. Handle exceptions. Method name is handle exception. I am going to annotate this at the rate exception handler. Exception handler, what type of exception I am going to mention? Exception dot class. Whenever exception comes, this method will be invoked. Exception E. Okay, let me create model of this exception response model. First, new date. Next is message. status code I am going to return server error. Port port is missing. We need to make it as HTTP status or make it as toString. Next, what I have to do is I have to create a response entity of type exception response model. Exception model. Okay, and response equal to new response entity, new response. This we are giving exception response model HTTP status code as internal server error and return this. Return response. Okay, that's all. What we have done, we have created one controller, custom exception handler, one model, exception response model, and this controller we annotated with the @rest controller advice, and we have annotated a method as exception handler. Whenever exception comes, super exception, right, for all the exceptions, this exception comes, call this method, this function will be invoked, and this response will be sent to the consumer. Starting the servers. Here we have written all the parameters. Now after customizing it, centralizing the exception handling, we will not return all the parameters. We will be returning only 3 parameters. Okay, app is up. See the friends, we are returning timestamps, message, and HTTP status code. Internal 500 internal server error, and here also we are returning. See, in case of user not found, we are again back to the original problem. We should not return 500 internal server error. We have to return 404 error. How do we do that? We need to have one more exception handler. Instead of generic exception, what we will say is user not found exception. User not found. Here also, instead of two generic, custom. Here, let's make it as a different method name. User not found exception. Now we'll change the status code. Not found. This user is not found. Okay, that's all. Let me restart the application. Okay, service is up. Let me start it. See, we are returning 404 now. Previously we have written 500 error. Now we are returning 404 error. A user not found. See, in this lecture what we have learned, just recap, guys. We have created one custom exception controller. Custom exception controller we have annotated with the @rest controller advice. Have created public method annotated with the @exception handler. Here for this is for generic, this is for specific error message. In case of if we are getting specific error message, then we are returning the 404 error. and we have created one exception response model to hold the response attribute in case of exception. Thank you guys. We'll go into deeper in upcoming lecture.